Thanks for your patience. Good evening, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to do an introduction to the Common Application and touch upon some of the primary factors of an American college application. This is a huge topic, so we're not going to be able to talk about everything related to college admissions. There's a few things we're not going to go to very, very deep in depth. We're going to touch briefly on the essays at the end. We'll go through some of the personal statement writing prompts for the Common Application, but this isn't going to be an essay writing workshop. That's a much kind of longer discussion. If there are some very specific things that you'd like us to touch on towards the end, please put your comments in the Q&A section or put them in the chat and we will address them towards the end. Let me start with a little bit of an agenda for what we're going to go over today. So I'm going to do kind of a section breakdown and walkthrough of the Common Application. It's actually a pretty straightforward tool, but I think there's a useful order to look through the Common Application so that you kind of don't get overwhelmed. So I'm going to start with a section breakdown, then I will walk you through some of the main sections of the Common Application, actually using an account. We'll look at some of the changes to application evaluation given the COVID-19 pandemic. If you are a rising grade 12 student, if you'll be applying this year, some of those comments will be relevant to you. They will also be kind of focused on general application review and what are some of the philosophies that are used to look at an application. How do admissions officers actually think about it? We'll look at a little bit at recommendations and profile. Then we'll end with essay prompts for 2020 and a question and answer session. So first I want to just kind of take some deep breaths, particularly since this is an uncertain time, a stressful time for a lot of people with shelter in place, with quarantine, with city shutdowns, really all around the world. But the reality is that everybody is in that same experience, more or less together. There's some major discrepancies, of course, but colleges and universities are well aware and are deeply engaged with helping students maintain some sense of confidence that their applications are not going to be hurt by the COVID-19 pandemic. That's kind of a difficult thing to believe. I understand, but things like SAT scores, things like ACT scores, things like extracurriculars being canceled, those things in particular will not necessarily impact the way colleges are reviewing your applications. Now, there are some important caveats to that assurance, which is you still have to make good use of your time, right? You still can't necessarily just sit and play video games all day. Video games are good, but balance is also important. So these are some comments that admissions officers from different universities have made, trying to assure students and high schools from really around the world that they're going to be flexible this year. It's also important to realize that it's, of course, still very much a changing system. Things around the SAT, things around the ACT, even the Common Application may change. So if you're applying this year, it's very important that you kind of stay up to date with the news from some of these organizations, from some schools, as new policy measures are released, because they'll continue to change, I think, over the next coming months and probably for a long time to come. So the things that we're going to discuss today are kind of what we know now. The Common Application has said that they're going to make a couple of changes related to the coronavirus. Those probably won't happen for another couple of months. They won't be gigantic structural changes to the Common Application. Probably they will add like a little box or something where you can talk about specific coronavirus related changes in your life circumstances. So let's get into it. Let's talk about applications. Let's talk about how we think about them, what they are. Spark Prep uses this model of thinking about 3 different themes to your application, to the way that applications are evaluated. And those 3 different themes can be broken down into 6 kind of different aspects, different kind of distinct aspects of your application, pretty much everything in your application can fall into one of these 6 categories. So the first one that most people are familiar with are academics. Academics show up in a lot of different ways. They show up on your grades and transcript, but they also show up related to your specific program, whether you're in an IB program, whether you're in a public school program, an AP program, an A-levels program. Colleges are familiar with many, many different high school curricula. So don't worry about what your curricula is. Colleges and universities will know how to evaluate it. There's some particular information that they'll get. The other is, of course, test scores. Test scores are going to play a little bit of a different role this year in college applications, just because the SATs and ACTs have been canceled and probably will continue to be canceled for the next couple of months, if I had to guess. Even so, the College Board and the ACT are going to be rolling out at-home tests, but those won't necessarily have been tested or evaluated by colleges or universities. So currently, if you haven't tested yet, our blanket advice is to continue preparing, but it's not necessarily guaranteed that you'll be able to test this year if you're not a rising grade 12 student. And even if you are, many, many universities are going test optional. That's another conversation. You can review some of our other webinars from previous weeks that discuss some of these topics. Let's talk about leadership and character. Leadership and character often show up in your activities and recommendations. Your recommendation letters, which we'll talk a little bit about later, are written by people who have a direct relationship with you. Teachers and counselors, usually. People in your school are the majority of people who are going to write your recommendations. And the things that they're talking about are your academic performance, your leadership, your community engagement, your commitments, your character, your maturity, things that we can't see on paper. Your academics often are things that we'll say like exist on paper. They're numbers, but they don't have the specific context of who you are as a student. The rest of your leadership and your growth and your values add additional context that make your application specifically yours, which is the thing that makes it so important. Growth and values are often reflected in your essays and in your supplements. Your personal statement, which goes to all of your colleges and universities via the Common Application, usually is the place where you reflect on something that is important to you. A topic, an idea, a set of insights, a set of experiences. There are thousands of ways to write a good personal statement. What you choose to write about in your essays is a reflection of the things that are important to you. That takes some level of self-reflection, that takes some level of the ability to use language to explore the things that are important to you. That takes time to deepen your insights, to make sure that what you're talking about is relevant to the application reader. So your essays and your supplements, which are the writing portion of the Common Application, is where we see your growth and values. So let's break down some of the sections of the Common Application. This next portion is going to focus primarily on logistics, right? Things that are kind of background details. You'll see what I mean. So the first page of the Common Application is the main Common Application. It is not the first tab that you see on the Common App when you open it. I'll give a walkthrough in a moment. But the main body of the Common Application is broken down into 6 different sections. Your profile, and your profile is your name, your high school information, it's just your background information. Then your family, to get a sense of like, who do you live with? Do you have siblings? All that kind of stuff. Your education, have there been any changes in the schools that you've gone to? Have you gone to multiple different high schools? What's the program that they use? Testing is going to be ACT, SAT, TOEFL, IELTS, AP exams. And then your activities section, which is a 10-part, well, there's only 10 activities. It's very brief. The activity section is a very, very limited section in the Common Application. I'll talk about that in a moment. And then the writing section. Importantly, the main body of the Common Application is the same for every college that you apply to. It gets submitted to all of the schools that you apply to. So it's not different for any of the schools you apply to. You'll see a little preview button here. This preview button generates a PDF to show you exactly what admissions officers are going to see. Before you submit your common application, you want to generate that PDF to do your final proofread, your final spell check, make sure there's no typos, make sure you haven't written your name wrong or your address wrong. Once you submit the common application to a school, it can't be changed for that school. You can't make any adjustments because the school downloads the information from the common application. It's not a live reflection what's on the common application and what the colleges are seeing. So you have to be really careful. Nothing can change to your common application once it's submitted to a school. You can change details, like if your activities change for colleges that you're going to apply to later. So if you apply early action or early decision in October and November, and then an activity changes, you can make that adjustment for your regular decisions, but that won't be reflected in your early decision schools. The next section I want to look over is your dashboard. This is the main page that you're going to be looking at when you're when you first open up the common application. It's basically quick access to the specific material for each of the colleges. That there's two sections that we're going to see in the that look at your college information. There's this dashboard, and then there's just my colleges list, and we'll look at that in a second. This gives you information on application requirements. You can see this box right here, application requirements, gives you a spreadsheet view for literally all the requirements that each school has. So the common application is trying to give you multiple ways to view the same information. So dates are going to be here. Deadlines, application fees, specific requirements about supplements and testing, particularly for international students. You'll see all that in the application requirements. You'll also see that in the My Colleges section. So this application requirements button, which I'll show you in a moment, is really useful to get a bird's eye view for all of the requirements for your particular set of schools. So you can see that I have a few schools listed, Amherst and Duke. These are on my dashboard. So it will only show you the application requirements for the schools that you have said you're applying to. You can add up to 20 colleges on the common application. You're not permitted to apply to or add more schools than 20 on the common application. They've limited you to that. We don't necessarily recommend that. Most students are going to be applying to between 12 and 15 schools. So the application requirements will just reflect the colleges that you've added to your list via the college search window. And I'll show you that in a second. The dashboard has an expanded view. So this kind of breaks down some more details, specific details about what you're working on for this particular college. So you can see I've clicked more details for Amherst College. It tells me that my application and my supplement are in progress. So it's giving me a little status update. It's telling me that my recommenders are also in progress and that my writing questions are in progress. And then it's said that I haven't reviewed my common application personal statement essay. That doesn't exist. So it's not going to let me submit yet. And my college questions for Amherst have not yet been done, and my writing supplements haven't been done. So these are like the high-level writing requirements. Something that's very important, I think, for me to mention, because this gets a little bit confusing every year, is that the questions section, you can see that here, is different from the writing questions. I don't know why they do that, and they haven't figured out a better way to say that, but it's important to note that there's two sections for each of the colleges. There's the college questions and then the writing questions, what we sometimes call writing supplements. Those are different, and you need to fill them out in that order. You need to fill out your college questions, again, here, and then your writing questions in the supplement. And the reason for that is some essays are dependent on the major that you're applying to. So the best example is if you're applying to an engineering major at certain universities, they will add an additional question to your writing supplements, but they'll only add it if you've selected I'm applying to engineering in the question section. So be very careful, make sure you're filling out the question section first, and then all of the supplements will be shown to you. This is the college search section. This is how you add schools to your college list and your dashboard. Importantly, this is not really a college research tool. It's not really intended to introduce you to new colleges and universities. If you need that, you want to be looking at different resources like the FISC Guide or Big Future, or working with a college counselor or coach. They can help tailor a college list for you and with you. There are a lot of not great resources on the internet. We don't recommend using the US News and World Report. We don't particularly recommend using Niche, but the FISC Guide and the Big Future can help introduce you to things. You just got to be a little bit mindful. As soon as you search for a school, you put the name in here and you press this little plus button, and it will be added to My Colleges and dashboard. This is what the My Colleges section looks like, and this is basically the highest level detailed information for every college. It's their contact information, it's their application deadline, it's their application information, where you have things like fees. So everything that you should know about your application will exist in this section for this particular school. Deeper details around the way colleges evaluate things, their particular philosophy, you can click on their website or go to their admissions website and look specifically at their requirements. That's usually a good idea, particularly this year, to see if a college has gone test optional, SAT or ACT optional. I don't know that that information will be reflected in the Common Application yet. My guess is probably, but because schools have been changing their policies very quickly this year related to SAT and ACT, you always want to double check the requirements on the college's specific website. So you just go to admissions.collegename.edu. That will bring you to their admissions website, or you can just search for it on Google and that will show up for you. So you want to double check the requirements. But as far as the Common Application is concerned, all of the application deadlines and information are going to be on this page in the My Applications area. A couple of highlights to point out to you: the FERPA and the recommendations. FERPA is it's a, what do we call it? I guess it's a law that basically entitles students to review all of their personal information when it's submitted to colleges. However, because colleges want to make sure that recommendation letters are private, that recommenders can write honestly and genuinely and write an authentic reflection, you have to waive your right to the FERPA. And there's a little section, if you click on this, it will bring you to, you say like, I waive my right to demand access to my application. Every student has to do that. That's common practice. It's not really optional. So you're going to need to submit that or waive it before you can actually submit your recommendation letters. Again, you want to review and submit, review your PDF before the final submission. There's going to be a little review button in maybe, is it up here? Yeah, up here. Before you actually submit, sorry, it's down here. In review and submit your writing supplement, there will be a little area you can generate your PDF. And again, that will show you exactly what the school is going to see when they're evaluating your application. And again, just to point out, this college question section and writing supplement question are different. That can be a little bit confusing. Just fill it out in this order. Fill out questions first, then fill out the writing supplement. Hopefully that will be a little bit clear. I want to just look at one specific area in the main Common Application body where you're going to fill out your personal statement. You're going to write your personal statement, obviously, not in the Common Application. You're going to do your drafting either in a Word document or in a Google document so that you can do all of your editing and proofreading and revisions really, really carefully separately. Then you will cut and paste into the personal statement or the personal essay area. The Common Application will sometimes change the formatting because formatting is not the same universally in all web processing. So as soon as you add your personal statement, you want to go to preview and see, did the formatting change? Did the line breaks go away? Did the tabs go away? Am I using any special characters? Sometimes the simple telex system for Vietnamese will not translate 100%, or the kerning of the characters will look weird. So again, this preview will show you exactly what admissions officers are seeing. So review that very carefully before you submit anything. The other thing that I want to point out to you is this additional information section. Additional information traditionally has been for extenuating circumstances, special circumstances. If you were sick for a very long time, or if there was a divorce or disruption or death in the family, something that disrupted your normal progression through high school. Most students don't usually fill out the additional information section. However, probably many, many more students this year will be reflecting on whether COVID-19 and coronavirus specifically disrupted their lives in a unique way. You don't need to use this if your high school has not directed you to yet, because a lot of your particular disruptions will be reflected in your counselor essay, your counselor letter, or in your secondary school report. That's one of the things that I think is going to change in the Common Application in the next couple of months. They have announced that they probably will make that change, but they haven't implemented it yet. It's okay to register for the Common Application now. None of the dates have been updated from last year. The Common Application usually has a day, it's usually in July or August, where they roll over from last year's application to this year's application. It's totally fine for you to begin filling out information, your profile information, family education. It will stay. None of that information will get deleted. Your application will roll over once the new application goes live. But just be aware that the dates and things have not been changed, so nothing says 2020 quite yet. That's normal every year. So I want to take a second and go actually just do a little bit of a walkthrough and show you what the dashboard for the Common Application looks like. So this is a practice version for the Common Application. Anyone can make one of these. You can make one of these. All Spark Prep people can make one of these. Anybody can have a practice account. Practice account is meant to show you exactly what the Common Application looks like. I don't necessarily recommend a practice account because you can just use your regular account. So here's the main body of the Common Application. Again, profile information is your name, background information, address, contact details, all that kind of stuff should be pretty straightforward. Family information is about your household, whether your parents are married or not, siblings, all that kind of stuff. Education is going to be your most recent high school and any other schools that you happen to have gone to. It'll be your counselor information, counselor email. Colleges and universities, that's usually if you have taken classes at a college or university for credit, particularly grades, most recent courses that you've taken, any honors that you've received. Excuse me. Testing is going to be the SAT, ACT, IB, AP subjects or AP exams. Activities, so activities is a little bit tricky. You want to write all of your activities again in a separate document. I recommend literally writing them down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 through 10. There are a few different types that you can categorize your activities under: athletics, culture, speech and debate, environmental, family responsibility, etc. You only get 150 characters to describe your accomplishments and your overview. This takes some time, right, to actually not just describe what the activity is, but how it relates to you. The levels that you've participated in, different grades, whether that was all year or just during the summer, and whether you're going to continue doing this activity in college. Excuse me. If you need more insight, each of the sections here has a little tutorial that if I click on it will bring up a video, a little YouTube video on how to fill out the activity section. Most of the different sections have this little tutorial. So yeah, there's a little one for family, for testing. Just for the main stuff you want to use it. You can look at it for writing, but it's not necessarily super useful that way. College search, if I type in the name Amherst, it'll auto-populate. I can add it. Any school, it will auto-populate and I can add it. It will show up here in my colleges section. Again, here's what it looks like, the difference between the questions section. This is general academics, your term, your admissions plan, early action, or regular decision. Particular things related to gender, pronouns. These are school-specific questions. These are just questions that Amherst is asking. Anything in this section only goes to the colleges that you're applying to. So when you go to review and submit, it's only going to Amherst. Amherst is only going to get the common application main section and the information in the Amherst College supplement. It won't get anything from Duke, and it won't send anything to Duke, even though they're next to each other. Colleges can't see anything else in your common application. They don't know what other schools you're applying to. They don't know any of that information. So fill out the information in the question section first, and then you're going to be able to fill out the writing supplement, and they'll ask you some specific questions here. Things to pay attention to are how long the supplements are, the writing requirements. So I'm going to make my selection, but one of the things that doesn't always make clear is how long my essay should be. So here it says specifically in 300 words, but not all supplements are very clear about how long my supplement needs to be. There's a little bit of a trick to figuring that out if it doesn't say so explicitly. You can go to the question section. If it has a text box, let's say it doesn't, you can see down here the number of words that you're allotted. So make sure before you actually start writing that you know exactly how long your essay should be. Don't write a 650-word essay for a 150-word or 250-word essay. That will make you very sad. So pay attention to those requirements. Those are the main features of the Common Application that I think are important to look at. Generally, this financial aid resources program is designed primarily for domestic students. So I don't spend a lot of time looking at this for international students, because usually it's designed primarily with domestic students in mind. Federal government, that's only related to domestic students, American students. The FAFSA is all domestic students. So international financial aid is going to be very college specific. That's a whole discussion in and of itself. It's a pretty long and complicated conversation. Suffice to say, if you want to know whether a college has financial aid for an international student, you have to Google it. College name, international student, financial aid. And they will give you the policy there. So let's head back to our presentation. So I just want to remind you of the kind of 6 aspects that are going to be represented in your Common Application somewhere. Somewhere in your Common Application, we're going to see your activities, your recommendations, your grades and transcripts. Now, your official transcript is sent separately. It's sent directly to the colleges from your high school. It's not sent via the Common Application. Sorry, that's incorrect. It is uploaded through your counselor's Common Application, usually. It's not uploaded through your Common Application. So your counselor has their own Common Application account. It looks different from this, where each of their students is kind of listed for them, and they can upload individual transcript and documents for their students. So it's separate from you. You can't see what happens on the counselor application account. Some schools, however, will upload transcripts through other organizations like Cialfo or Naviance or Squire. There are a bunch of third-party private organizations that work with colleges and high schools to facilitate information. And if your school doesn't have those, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. So I want to give a kind of an overview of how applications are going to be evaluated. This year, more than any, but all the time, context is everything. College applications are evaluated not globally, but related to specific context, the context you come from. What are the resources you have available to you? What are your what classes are available, and how did you make use of those resources? So how you spend your time and the way that you justify spending your time is going to be the most important thing that's going to be evaluated in your applications. So think about how you want that reflected. Do you want that reflected in your activities, in your essays? Do you want that reflected in your recommendation letters? How you spend your times, particularly now that many of us are sheltering in place and things are slowly opening back up, but we don't know how long until they're open back up in a normal way, or if they will be. accounting for making good use of your time, which is to say, not necessarily waiting for things to get back to normal, but making good use of your time now will be very important. What are the choices that you made? How did you account for your time? How did you grow during this period? And how can you justify that growth or demonstrate that growth? If you have an internet connection, you should be able to do basically the same thing that everybody else around the world is doing. You can take classes, you can engage in communities, you can research things, you can develop new skills, you can develop new techniques. Don't necessarily keep your relationship with the internet just social media and remote learning with your high school. Make sure that you can also use it to edify and to grow. AP exams won't be evaluated as heavily this year because of the change in testing format. Many schools haven't necessarily said whether they will accept them. You should still prepare for them if you're taking them. Academically, spring 2020 is different because so much has been disrupted. High schools took a different amount of time to figure out what they were going to do. Don't stress out is the main thing. That will be accounted for in your application. So everybody is going to know that this particular period from January until the end of this particular school year will have to be addressed uniquely, and everybody's going to be looking at it that way. So don't worry about it too much. Obviously do your best. If it is a particularly stressful time at home, if your internet connection is bad, if there are other disruptions, if mental health is really challenging, colleges will be able to, there will be a moment to be able to reflect on that. Take care of yourself, take care of your family. Basic needs first are the most important. So don't stress out too much. GPA evaluations are going to continue to change because some schools may go to percent or pass, no pass, credit, no credit models. Again, colleges will be able to evaluate that because it will be reflected in your secondary school reports. Excellent essays, I think, will still be key. Spark Prep students have begun writing their essays. We usually begin writing our essays in April. End of March is when we do our introductions. So now is a great time to start writing your essays or thinking about essays, analyzing essays, understanding how to approach the personal statement and your supplemental essays. Particularly if writing is not your forte, you have to develop a practice. Practice is the most important thing when writing essays. You can't write a great essay very quickly, particularly if writing is not a strength of yours. So I want to look very briefly at recommendations and evaluations. Many high schools have a designated counselor and advisor who are responsible for sending your transcript and your recommendations. If you don't have this, any person at your school, any official, a principal, a head teacher, even a regular teacher, can be made into a counselor. So don't worry if your school doesn't have an official counselor. That's normal. High schools around the world have different systems. So colleges are accustomed to that. We just need basically a point person, someone who is responsible, who says like, I take responsibility for this. I can make the academic evaluation and send the transcripts officially, because you as a student can't send the official transcript. That's the only thing. Most schools are going to ask for between 1 and 2 teacher recommendations. The key here is teacher recommendations. You can't have a parent send a recommendation. Those aren't very useful. You can't have a family member. You can't have like you just need to be teachers. Importantly, letters need to come from people who work with you because they comment primarily on your academic performance, on your community engagement, your maturity and character. They can't do that if they haven't worked with you very closely. So additional letters are only permitted in special circumstances, but again, all recommenders should have a direct connection with you personally. That could look like they've taught you in a class, or they've overseen you in research, or maybe they have managed you in an internship role, or know you in some leadership capacity. Those are okay for additional letters of recommendation. Not all colleges or universities will accept additional letters of recommendation. Every school has a limit and has a specific policy. It's not the same. So our suggestion to students usually is that you get 2 teacher recommendations, and that That's in addition to your counselor recommendation. And that if there is someone who is overseeing you in an internship role or a research role or a leadership role, that's okay. But we don't want like random famous people that your parents knows, that your parents know. We don't want random politicians. We don't want like people who don't have a direct relationship with you. Don't have them write a letter of recommendation. It never works. It never makes a difference. Even if you like know like just a random professor out of college, but like they haven't worked with you, usually that doesn't make any difference. So just knowing someone at the college doesn't really mean that they should write you a letter of recommendation. Okay, personal statement, essay prompts, and overview. Let's talk about, we're just gonna really look at the prompts and how to think about them and how to evaluate them. The main comment that I wanna make here is that these prompts are a jumping off point. These are not necessarily hard and fast questions that you have to answer. You just pick one. There are 7 different options that you can choose. But again, the idea prompt means like we're springboarding you into writing. The primary thing is to write an excellent essay. However you write an excellent essay is fine. 650 words is the limit. Anything above 500 words is considered acceptable. The Common Application won't accept anything under 250 words, but you don't want to write that short anyway. The final prompt is, so if these first 6 prompts don't work for you, if you don't like them, if they don't inspire you, the last prompt says, or submit an essay on any prompt or topic that works for you. So it's very, very open-ended. These prompts have been designed usually to give some sense of guidance for students to help you kind of brainstorm. But again, write about whatever you want or however you want, just write a good essay. The first prompt that we're gonna look at is the most common because it's the most open-ended. So most students write on this prompt, I think it's like 60%. You can search and they have the statistics. We'll write on this prompt because it's the most flexible, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best or it's the one for you. Some students have a background, identity, interest, or talent that is so meaningful, they believe their application would be incomplete without it. If this sounds like you, then please share your story. There's a few keywords you want to pay attention to here. First keyword is meaningful. You have to write about, if you choose this topic, it has to be meaningful. You're not writing about something that is abstract or remote to you. Meaningful to you, specific to you, important to you is the key thing. The second keyword is story. Do you have to write a story? Not necessarily. It can be a reflection, it can be an analysis, it can be a combination of those things. Stylistically, there's a lot of different ways that you can engage or write. They're sharing background, identity, interest, or talent. That's a pretty broad range of things. Background is experiences in my life. Identity means how I think about myself. Interest means things that I think about or engaged in. Talent means things maybe that I've cultivated over time. Again, broad range here. It's basically a reflection on what makes you you. How did you become you? And what are some of the salient features of that? Lots and lots of ways to write this essay. The second prompt has a couple of suggestions in structure in it. It's kind of like 3 different questions in one, and I'll kind of explain what I mean by that. The lessons we take from obstacles we encounter can be fundamental to later success. Recount a time when you faced a challenge, a setback, or failure. How did it affect you? And what did you learn from the experience? So those are the 3 different sections. 1, recount. 2, how it affected you. And 3, what did you learn? So there's kind of a suggested consideration, things to consider in this essay, in the way that they've written this prompt. 1 is kind of the background. What is the challenge that you're reflecting on? 2, why did it affect you, or how did it affect you specifically, such that it's important for you to write about? And 3, why did you learn? Why is it important to you? The important part is, the what did you learn is the important part, right? You don't want to talk about a challenge or setback that wasn't that meaningful. So this might not be the prompt for you if you haven't had a challenge or setback or failure that didn't impact you in some way. Question 3 is pretty similar in that it has 3 suggested sections. 1, reflect on a time when you questioned or challenged a belief or idea. 2, what prompted your thinking? And 3, what was the outcome? This third part, what was the outcome, suggested that you took some action and that the the questioning or the challenging wasn't just in your mind necessarily, but it had some impact on your material reality, either that's in relation to a family or a belief or an injustice that you were seeing or a policy or whatever it happened to be. The why, what prompted your thinking, is in the second part, and the result, what was the outcome, is in the third part. Reflection and analysis about why this was important is the most important part of this essay. This question is a little bit odd because it's two different questions in one. It's both a real question and a hypothetical question. Describe a problem you've solved or a problem you would like to solve. So it could be something that you haven't solved yet, but maybe that you would like to. Or it could be a problem that you in fact have solved. It can be an intellectual challenge, a research query, an ethical dilemma, anything that is of personal importance. And that's the key word, personal importance, no matter the scale. If you don't care about astrophysics, you shouldn't write an essay about solving a problem in astrophysics. If you don't care about social justice, you shouldn't write an essay about solving a problem of social justice. It has to be of personal importance to you. Because this last portion, explain its significance to you and what steps you took to solve the problem if you have already solved the problem, or could be taken to identify a solution if it's a problem you would like to work on. This question is about showing your thought process, how you evaluate problem solving. It's also about reflecting on values and what are the kinds of problems that are important to you. Number 5, discuss an accomplishment, event, or realization that sparked a period of personal growth and a new understanding of yourself or others. I don't particularly love this question because I think it's kind of the same as some other questions, just a little bit more general. A setback or failure could be a period of realization or growth. Personal identity can be reflection for growth, new understanding of others. They're talking about accomplishment or event. But the idea of realization, sparking periods of personal growth, that kind of reflects on all the other questions as well. Basically, all of the questions should be some consideration of personal growth or new understanding in some way or another. Your reflection, the way you write, the way you analyze, should all be geared towards insight or realization in some way or another. Number 6, also a little bit weird, particularly since we live in this world of quick attention changes. Describe a topic, idea, or concept you find so engaging that it makes you lose all track of time. Why does it captivate you? What or who do you turn to when you want to learn more? I think that this is just really a question about being passionate about an idea or topic that you've like really gone deep into and super immersed yourself into. I think their wording's a little bit odd because like, I don't know too many people who lose all track of time. It's a little bit hard to imagine. But the big question here is why it captivates you and how do you learn more? It's about self-direction. Where do you gain resources? Is there someone who's mentoring you? Do you read a ton of books? How do you basically edify yourself? The last question is share an essay on any topic of your choice. So if any of those prompts didn't work for you, you can share an essay that you've already written, one that responds to a different prompt, or one that you design yourself. I would caution you against submitting an essay that you've already written, unless it is reflective or personal in nature. So most students are not going to have an essay that they've written for a high school class that's going to be suitable for a college essay for the Common Application, mostly because of the style and the word count, 650 words. The way Spark Prep coaches students on how to write essays is we use these 3 tools: content, structure, and style. Content is what you write about, your topic, your reflection, your metaphors, your insights, your ideas, your subject matter. Content it answers the question, the what. What is your essay about? Structure is how that content flows over time through paragraphs and sections. And style is your particular voice, how you're doing that using particular stylistic techniques. I've been doing this work for about 10 years, and I still find interesting things to talk about related to content, structure, and style. Many, many different books have been written on these topics. I think they're both simple tools, but also extremely powerful and profound tools. And they're very useful. what essay writing means for most people is that they take time. So you have to start early. It's a process of discovery. It's a process of exploration. Most of the questions we got related to essay writing was, how do I write an essay? And of course, that's a challenging question, because if you haven't done these essays before, you have to learn. And really just getting started and then exploring and taking your time, not trying to write the perfect essay at the first sitting or the second or the third. You might have 24, 25, 26 different sessions where you're actually writing. Over time, you're going to learn. It will become clear. Be patient, take your time, stay open. Ask for feedback early. If you're going to ask for feedback, be very specific. Only ask from people whose feedback you know will be useful. Don't ask for broad or general feedback. And always specify what feedback you're looking for. Is this idea clear? Does this sentence make sense? Does this transition work for you? Don't ask from feedback for people who have no writing background. Don't write from people who have only written one essay in their life. Everybody's going to have their own opinion. The more people you ask feedback from, the more diverse opinions you might get, and that could be confusing. So keep your feedback early and be specific. Don't ask for feedback on your final draft unless you want to get your heart broken. Consider your personal statement material against your activities and where other information is coming from in your application. You remember that graph we looked at? All of that is giving us information. Your personal statement is also giving us information, and you might want to think about that strategically. Maybe you don't want to be redundant. Maybe you want to be complementary with the other material that's happening in your activities section and in your supplementary list. Spark Prep goes through a process with each of our students called content mapping, where we map out the entire universe of material that you might draw on your application. That kind of exercise is really useful. Let's see what else. Yeah, writing is an art form. Give it time to clarify and distill. Writing is not necessarily something that you learn overnight. It's something that you develop over months and years. I'm still developing as a writer. Most authors that you'll talk to are still refining their craft. So if writing is unfamiliar to you, rather than starting by writing a personal statement, I would learn writing skills first. Read some books, watch some YouTube videos, read some articles on the craft of writing, on how to become a good writer. And the most important thing is develop a writing practice. Writing practice is the most important thing. Write every day. Most importantly, I think, is work with a coach who can give you writing instruction, feedback, and perspective. Spark Prep has been doing this for about a decade. Our coaches are extremely experienced. They know the ins and outs of the writing process, particularly for personal statement and supplemental essay writing. I think the most important thing about coaches is that we know how to listen for the material that students are seeking for and help direct you, not to say this is what you should write about, but this is what I hear you thinking about. Here are some things to consider to help focus you and streamline some of your thoughts, help you understand the things that are going to be extraneous and make you a little bit more efficient. So there are a million things more to talk about college applications, but that's the overview. That should give you a little bit of focus of the main things that you're going to need to be looking at and writing about and working on and planning for. There are many different application forums. The Common Application is just one. There's also the Coalition application. There are specific state school applications. The Common Application has about 900 member schools. Most schools you're going to apply to will use the Common Application. And now I'd like to open it up for question and answer. So we have about 10 minutes for questions and answers. I'll open up the chat window and I'll bring up the Q&A section. And my staff, Ming Chang, Ngop, and Zoe will help me identify some questions first. Let's see. So Eddie asks, I'd like to ask more about the leadership aspect. How should I develop my leadership skills and contribute to society so it can be considered to be mentioned in my college application? On the other hand, how can I write a concise personal statement of purpose or letter of motivation And what about letter of reference? How can it be proactive to be well referred by? So there's several questions here. We'll talk about leadership and contribution. So leadership and contribution has, it's a reflection of your values. The things that are important to you, that could be your immediate community, your neighborhood. It could be your broader community, your school. It could be your broader community, your city, etc. Right? So you want to find, what are the things that bring you life, that bring you joy? Is it working directly with one or two other people? That could be tutoring, that could be, or is it working on a group project for things like improving the environment or providing food or resources? Before you figure out what your leadership is going to look like, you first have to do an assessment of what is the need around you, right? So the place where your skills and your values meet the need around you is where excellent leadership and contribution happens. So the other way to say that is, if there are interests that you have, but there's no need, right? You don't want to give food to people who have enough food, right? There's no need to do that. So first evaluate what would be most helpful. That might take some research, that might take some time, and then figuring out how to meet that need, I think, is one of the best ways to start thinking about contribution and leadership. There are literally many dozens, thousands of books written on leadership. I definitely recommend doing some reading on leadership. It means something different to everybody. There's no particular definition of leadership. Part of your question means figuring out what leadership means to you, because what leadership means to you will be different from what leadership means to me or any other student. And I think the things that colleges are interested in is, how did you go through that reflection? Not did you fulfill some generic sense of leadership, but did you engage in that question specifically for yourself in a particular environment? And then the final thing is over time. Right? So just doing one day of volunteer work is like a good thing, but it's not that interesting on an application. You want to show up over and over again. You want to be engaged. Your commitment over a long period of time is the thing that will demonstrate leadership and engagement. And whether that is in contribution or in any activity you do, commitment over time kind of is the thing. Let's see. Let's see, others. Huang Chen asked what should be included in a recommendation letter. Recommendation letters reflect on a few different things. Your academic performance in that class. So let's say you're getting a recommendation from a math teacher. And let's say that math teacher has worked with you over 2 years, right? So let's say grade 11 and grade 10 and grade 11. So that teacher is going to talk about your growth intellectually, academically, personally, in terms of maturity, characteristics. They're going to talk about your contributions in class. Are you helpful to others? Are you prepared? Do you ask insightful questions? Are you respectful? Do you elevate the classroom by your presence? Do you engage in this material outside of class? Do you ask questions from the teacher when you need help or support? They're reflecting on anything that you do that is noteworthy, that is part of who you are as a person, because the recommendation letters are a good indication of how you're going to be on the college campus, right? So colleges are using your recommendation letters to ask, well, what kind of student will they be in college? Because the kind of student that you were in grade 11 and grade 12 is a good indication of the kind of student that you're going to be in college. So again, respectful or prepared or insightful or contributing or supportive or generous, whatever the qualities are, there's hundreds of them, whatever the qualities are that define you as a student, as a person, as a human being, that a teacher would be able to see and understand, those are the kind of qualities that go into a letter. Growth over time, sometimes performance, sometimes involvement in activities outside of class. They're basically highlights of this teacher's relationship to you that a college would want to see in terms of what that might indicate about the kind of student you'll be in college. Let's see. Yes, someone asked for supplemental essays. Should we use the same one for a few colleges with some tweaks? It really depends. There are some questions that are the same. So for example, many schools will ask you a question about an extracurricular activity. They'll say, tell us about an extracurricular activity that you've been engaged in that has been particularly important for you. And that's totally a fine question for you to use and tweak for many different schools. Usually the big change will be 250 words to 150 words, the word count or the word limit. You want to be very careful about recycling some essays, because if the prompt is not the same, or if they're too different, it's pretty easy to tell that you haven't answered the prompt. Whereas the personal statements are jumping off points, the supplemental essays, if they're asking you a specific question, you want to answer that specific question. Don't use that as an opportunity to say something else. So I want to say, yes, you can recycle and adapt material, but you need to do that cautiously, as long as it is in fact answering the question that the individual school has asked. Lan has asked, would a teacher's recommendation from 9th or 10th grade be valid? It's a really good question. We generally don't suggest a recommendation from 9th grade unless that teacher has taught you again in 11th or 12th grade, or if they have continued to work with you in a later capacity. And the reason for that is students have gone through so much different growth from grade 9 to grade 12. Your adolescent years, your teenage years, you're going through just crazy maturity, growth, intellectual growth. And so a 9th grade letter of recommendation isn't a good reflection on who you are going into college, because it's old, it's dated. Again, it's fine if the teacher has worked with you in multiple different years, say like 9th grade and 11th grade, or 10th grade and 12th grade. The best letters of recommendation usually are going to come from teachers who've worked with you in 11th grade, because that's the most up to date, right? The most frequent, the most recent. So generally our recommendation is not to have teachers write from 9th grade. Daisy asks, do we need to translate all of our recommendation letters into English? Do I need to give my target schools the paper letter version? Yes, all recommendation letters must be translated into English. You can't assume that colleges will be able to speak Vietnamese, so you want to have a formal translation if you can. It'll be signed by your teacher. Submit both the original and the translation. Someone is asking, would the personal statement similar to the UCAS be recommended or required by some universities? The UCAS essay is pretty different from American applications. The UCAS asks usually for some very specific material based on your academic programs and your academic goals. It's not necessarily a personal reflection essay. So in some cases, a UCAS style essay might translate well to a personal statement for the Common Application, but almost never the opposite direction. You can almost never bring a personal statement from the Common Application into the UCAS, because the structure is usually different. UCAS essays usually are not so personal, not so reflective. There obviously is some reflection, but suffice to say they're quite different. The word count is different, and the requirements are a little bit different. The one asks, is it necessary to send a CV? The short answer is no. It's good to make a CV as an exercise. Some schools will have an additional area where you can upload a resume, but many won't. Many are just going to be using the activities section in the Common Application. The reason for that is colleges are trying to limit the amount of information, because if they just say that you can submit as much additional information as you want, they would be inundated by like a bunch of useless information from students all over the world. Remember, they're evaluating tens of thousands of applications every year, and they're trying to streamline the material that they're looking for. So try to just use the Common Application sections as best you can, and make sure everything that you're giving them is excellent and intentional. Let's see. Someone is asking, so if I'm going to apply to around 20 universities, I will have to write 20 650-word essays. No, that's not correct. You will write one 650-word essay for the Common Application. That same personal statement essay goes to every college. Every college gets exactly the same personal statement. There are no changes. That goes in the main body of the Common Application. Here, this Common Application section, this personal statement here goes to every college that you submit it to. So it's just one. then when you submit the common application, all of your colleges get that exact same essay. What is different is supplemental essays. And yes, that is insane. And so maybe you don't want to apply to 20 different schools. Maybe you want to apply to 12 or 15. Some of those supplemental essays will be quite short. Some of them will be 150 words, but some of them could be long. Some of them will be like 3 different 250-word questions or multiple different 100-word questions. Every college has a vastly different approach to supplemental essays. So yeah, you want to plan your time very, very carefully. Applying to 20 colleges is a ton of work. There's no way around that. Okay, let me do one more question. Should ECA, so V is asking, should extracurricular activities or work experience be more prioritized to put into the activity list? That's a good question. I'm not sure you need to choose. You should be able to fit both your extracurriculars or your work experience into your extracurricular list on the common application. Maybe you're talking about like if you had to choose what you put time into now from now into your application, do you choose between ECAs or work experience? You should choose the thing that is most important to you. Colleges will evaluate those things kind of the same. Work experience is an extracurricular activity, kind of, right? So there's no real difference. The way Spark Prep thinks about it is any commitment that you have outside of school, outside of class, whatever that commitment, part-time job, volunteering, music, babysitting your little kids, all of those commitments, particularly when done over time, are meaningful uses of your time, right? So you do them for a particular reason. Sometimes you do them because your parents require you to do them. Sometimes you do them because you're passionate about them. In those 10 different activities, you can reflect on the why and the what of them. So you don't necessarily have to choose between ECAs and work experience. Hopefully that answers your question. Thank you so much all for joining us. I know there are more questions, particularly around essay writing. I want to direct your attention to sign up for a one-on-one consultation with Zoe. She'll tell you a little bit more about how Spark Prep works with students and supports them through the application process. We work with students throughout grade 9, 10, 11, and 12. We work with students who are applying to college and to graduate programs. And I think she'll be able to tell you a lot more about how you might be thinking about your application strategy. We're going to have a number of upcoming webinars in the next couple of months. Usually weekly, we'll be doing some kind of webinar on some component of the application process. There's also a quick survey that we would love you to take just to get your feedback on how we can help structure this information better for you. I hope you're all staying healthy and well. I hope you get some rest, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon.